Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Open Network User Group podcast. I'm Mark Tierney, ONUG CTO. Today, we'll be visiting one of the most interesting members of the ONUG working group community, Ken Aurora from F5. I'm really excited about this, and I'm excited for you to get to know Ken and hear a little bit about his contributions. All right, but first, ONUG Fall 2022. Just seems like we wrapped up spring, which was an incredibly successful event. It was a hybrid event. The fall event will be a hybrid event as well. It's October 19th and 20th at Center 415 on 5th Avenue in Manhattan. That's right, kids, New York City, October 19th and 20th. So come join the ONUG community of global 2,000 companies, enterprise architects, cloud providers, and thought leaders as we explore the building blocks required to create flexible, transformative IT business platforms. Go to onug.net and register for the event today. All right, that's my spiel. How'd I do? How's my makeup? Joining me today is Ken Aurora. Ken's a distinguished engineer and architect at F5. He's also been a strong contributor to several ONUG working groups, including AI Ops and the Cloud Native Security Working Group, which, by the way, on the Cloud Native Security team, he's authored two blogs, Application Architectures, It's Been a Journey, and Thoroughly Modern Apps, their relationship with data and telemetry. Both of those things can be found on onug.net under our content and security blog tab. That's right. And he's also recently authored a What Hollywood Taught Me About Zero Trust. I'm going to pick on him a little bit on that. And with that, Ken, welcome. Welcome to the ONUG podcast, buddy.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mark. Mark is quite a character. I've had so much fun talking to him, talking with him, listening to him some more.
I'm a hot mess.
I'm going to be there in Manhattan. I hope to see you guys there too.
Hey, so before we get into some of the work that you've done for ONUG, and I want to give the community an opportunity to kind of get to know you a little bit. So give us that how it is. In a couple minutes, tell us your life story, Ken. Just wrap it up into a nice package for everybody. No, just give us a little background on you.
All right. So let's see. I'll start with I'll give a little hook, which I won't even have to dive into. I won't dive into too much. Grew up in Texas, actually, not too far away from where Mark is. Grew up learning how to break into houses and things. It was a lot of fun. It was a nice childhood.
Wow.
Ended up. Thought I wanted to, learn astrophysics, actually majored in astrophysics, but ended up in engineering. Worked on processors, worked at Intel during the golden days of processors in the 90s, 46, the Pentium, we want to call it the 586,
right.
And Pro and Itanium, for those of you who remember that, all sorts of fun stuff. Started a little company, did fast pattern matching in hardware, really cool, do regular expressions really fast. And somehow I landed in security. And that started my security journey. I worked for a number of years at Cisco. They actually acquired us. I acquired that little startup, was the architect for the ASA firewall family, and came to F5, started working on the firewall at F5, and have since then started I've joined the office of CTO at F5 about 4 years ago, and I've been working on all sorts of things, including hardware acceleration, AI, data telemetry, zero trust, you name it. It's kind of cool. It's a fun place. And I've been really excited to find folks at ONUG who have an equally wide sort of breadth of things they're interested in. Let's see what else.
You said a couple things. You said a couple things that gave me a twitch. You said ASA firewall, and I had a quick twitch, just hearkening back to, cutting and pasting configurations. That's always going to get me, right?
Yeah.
But, you start talking about chipsets, and I got to be honest, once you lost a turbo button on the front panel of a computer, I was done. You lost me there, right? So,
it's funny that pendulum, once you get as old as, I will speak for myself, as old as I am, you see the pendulum swing back and forth between hardware, software. Now it's I think it's starting to swing back towards hardware. There's some stuff that hardware's good at. DDoS. DDoS is about stuff coming in faster than your software can handle it. Seems sort of silly to use software to fix the software performance problem. You want to try to use some hardware at it, throw some hardware at it. And actually, it's a good blend of AI. We actually do some interesting things on one of the products I worked on where it's an ideal big data problem, right? I mean, what do you want for big data? You want to classify stuff, and you want to basically segregate it at very high speed. That's a big data problem. I don't know.
I've said this. I've said this for years now. Honestly, there are times when you can go wide and solve problems with commodity compute, but then there's sometimes when, listen, there's nothing better than some purpose-built, piece of gear that can do something very specific that you need, right? And they tend to give birth to other types of technologies, GPUs and DPUs and whatever the latest craze is, from smart NICs to offloading workloads onto alternate processors. It is what it is. But it's hard to beat purpose built gear sometimes. And sometimes it's the most important applications that can afford that sort of thing, right? It's that important.
Yeah, and you see it happening now. Although again, a common refrain you'll hear from me: it's all been done before. It's just that it takes about 20 years for people to forget. AI ops now, a lot of it's, at least DDoS, some of these things, it's high speed classification. Well, what was it? We did this 20 years ago in the knots, and it was called recommendation engines back then. We did it back in the 80s, back when my first job out of school. And for the government, we called it SIGINT. And we were reading the papers from Lancet guys in the 60s. Those problems have been around as long as computer science has been around. We just keep rediscovering the problem and finding a different way to use it every 20 years.
Is it just repackaging heuristics? In some regard, it feels like that sometimes. When you talk about that type of security, I could be wrong, but
no. I mean, some of it's that. I mean, some of it's heuristics. We get a breakthrough, and there's a flavor. The software and the algorithms drive things, right? There's the algorithmic flavor of the day. 20 years ago, 30 years ago was k-means clustering for the geeks out there. But it was like, okay, I got this cool algorithm. Let me figure out stuff and put in buckets. And now, I mean, the stuff there's in deep learning, there's been some really good stuff that's come out in the last 10 years. For those of you that are fans of Hinton at, I think he's Waterloo or Toronto, there were some big breakthroughs that happened, and that's what's enabled the current class of AI. I'm going to try to riff, or at least segue over into zero trust and AI ops. AI ops for security. I mean, so I hear a lot of stuff around deep learning, and every time I get into it, I go, well, that's great, but how much is my customer going to trust something where this Oracle, this black box, comes in and says, I think this is a bad guy, and with no explanation at all, with no idea. It's like that. I know that building trust in AI is tough. If you got no other way to figure out this is a cat or this is a wig on a picture, you might do it if you have to. But for security operators, they're kind of nervous about this sort of stuff. So I went there because now there's some really good stuff coming out where people are saying, I'm building in explainability to these models. And that's, I think, that's a hot button of mine. It's like, how do I build AI SecOps with explainability so that somebody will understand not just, hey, I think this is a bad guy, but why I think it's a bad guy. And that's a really important thing. And then there's there's new stuff there.
Yeah, listen, I'll echo the sentiment. When I look at what the SecOps and DevSecOps communities are facing, what they're having to deal with in the room, what I like to call in the room, right, on a daily basis, separating the real from the chaff is not easy. And being able to tell a relevant story amongst that could be super helpful, because my observation is the playbooks that large enterprises are for example are dealing with are can be overwhelming. They're daunting, and they don't even come close to hitting the total mark of inbound security messaging that they might need to be dealing with, right? They just can't deal with it all yet. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, I think it's fair. You look and see what, the truth about AI ops. You can edit this out if you need to, but yeah, there's that old line about C++ from 25 years ago, which was C++ is a lot like teenage sex. It's everybody thinks everybody else is doing it. The truth is, really, a lot fewer people are doing it than you think, and those that are probably doing it wrong. And okay, well, when I apply that to AI ops, there's a lot of hype around there, but you look at what's actually going on for 99.9% of the world. If you got the data, you're doing pretty good. Once you got the data, you can apply little just heuristic rules that are nice and explainable. And somebody has say, hey, if I see you log in from two places that are 1,000 miles apart within 5 minutes of each other, get suspicious. Or right. If I see you try to do 5 logon attempts in a row and fail, and then the 6th one works, but there were 5 different user IDs, fail. Right. I mean, these are simple little heuristic.
Yeah. I mean, unless you're Elon Musk and you own your own rocket ship, might be able to cross those distances in those times. You're right. Exactly right.
So,
and
that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It tells you that's where the low hanging fruit is. People do it because it works.
All right. You've written so much on the topic. Like I mentioned in the open, you've done a couple articles for us at ONUG, and those are just so people understand how things at ONUG work. On the working groups, typically somebody like Ken, like a thought leader in a particular area, will volunteer to write an article on a topic that they're passionate about or needs to be talked about one way or the other. And then the team, we hope, typically will jump in and help with edits or ask questions or whatever, just so that the final document, in this case, a couple of blogs that Ken did, everybody's happy with. But they're all done for the benefit of the community. So little plug for just how the ONUG working groups work. But you've done so much in the authoring documents for articles in the security space. I'm sorry, Ken, I couldn't help, but it's so you. This article that you dropped out of the F5 blog, Office of the CTO, what Hollywood taught me about zero trust. Listen, you are super nerd. Like, it just is what it is. I want to know, first of all your references in this document are Star Trek. Did you realize that when you did it? They're I think that's telling me something about
they're all Star Trek, or they're I thought I threw a couple of Star Wars and maybe even an Independence Day one in there as well. But they're all
did you get an? I don't know.
I'm pretty sure I did an Independence Day. If I didn't, I meant to. I didn't make the final edit. But it's like, come on, you're an alien spaceship that wants security against humans. Why aren't you going to put anything biometric in there?
Okay, so let's step back for a second and let's just put you on the spot. Are you more Star Trek or more Star Warsy? Can you be put in can you put baby in a corner on this one? That's what I want to know.
Gun to the head, I'm gonna pick Star Trek. Star Wars.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Star Trek is,
I'm with you.
Yeah, Star Wars is a little too epic.
Right. Yeah, I think there's too much cheese. Like, don't get me wrong, huge fan, but it's hard not to be drawn to the tech in the actual tech in Star Trek. They spent a little bit of time on that. I got sucked into Next Generation for that reason. Like, I felt like they did a really good job on that.
Okay.
And in that regard, you make a couple of references in the article about and it's a zero trust issue about how systems can and should or should not be interrelated to one another. And the first thing that popped up in my mind was, one way the Federation, attacked the Borg at one point was putting them to sleep through a captured Borg.
Right.
And they shut down the whole ship, right?
right. And they got in the garden.
And that's sort of what you're talking about. So rather than me riff on it, why don't you give a if you don't mind a few minutes on what you mean by these zero this important zero trust concepts.
Okay. So the other little bit of backstory why I picked Hollywood was back. I don't know if you remember, there was an old series in around 1990 called Young Indiana Jones. It's okay, it's obscure, but it was the first show I know of that went to entirely digital video production. And I think I referenced this in the blog, and so I had a chance to talk to some of the non-techie Hollywood people, and they basically use the word digital as a synonym for the word good, because that's how they experience digital. I picked that. So that was one reason I picked on Hollywood, because zero trust, the word zero trust now are turning into synonymous with good security. You're zero trust. I saw just this morning, I got, my random spam in my inbox about zero trust security. Now I got something about zero trust data. I don't even know what zero trust data. I didn't even click on that. I don't know. It's at this point, zero trust is a prefix on anything.
You didn't click on that link immediately?
So yeah. So of course, so yeah, picking Hollywood, and I pick on this idea because I could pick tech as a great example. The backdoor system, yeah, whether that's the Borg asleep or whether that was the garbage in Star Wars, if you're a Star Wars fan.
Yes.
It was breaking into ID4, like I talked about, getting in, inserting the virus, because they had a key card, not a biometric thing, just a key card. It's like, okay, so admittedly, Hollywood isn't in the business of tech, they're in the business of having good stories. So yeah, it makes a good story. But you look at all these breaches that have happened, many of them are things that are equally silly, right? I point this out and you'll laugh about it, but it's things like this that actually cause real breaches in the world. It's funny, people think about security and they think about hard math and crypto. It's not what most hackers think about. Most hackers think about, who am I going to call up there? What sort of clickbait am I going to put up? They're going to think about the simple stuff, not the things that all the nerds and the geeks think are the hard problems. So I did that. Zero trust, a couple of things though, they're timeless. I talked about it's all been done before. The ideas are timeless. They're basically about, be paranoid, assume you're going to get breached, always be watching, use least privilege. These are just fundamental things to do. I got to give a presentation to our execs in a couple of days. And I was thinking about, how am I going to explain some security stuff, not quite zero trust, but something kind of similar. And I ended up going to go the analogy of, you're going to build a house in California, you're going to worry about fires. What are you going to do? And you're going to do all of these things. You're going to be paranoid. You're going to assume fire is going to be there. What am I going to do about it? I'm going to put sprinklers on the outside. I'm going to build fire breaks. But it starts the design side too. How am I going to design my house? Am I going to use fire resistant materials? Where am I going to site my house? Am I going to put it, in a valley, up on the top of a hill, whatever? All these things matter. That's what inspired me. I'm getting a little feel from Hollywood, which is the question you asked, but these things have everyday analogs. And when I can explain it to people in these everyday terms, it sticks a lot better than me trying to talk about things like SASE or whatever else.
Sure. Well, you do a great job in this article that I'll make sure everybody gets access to or pointed to, by, breaking it down into 5 main categories: authentication, access control, visibility, contextual analysis, with the idea that it could be ML assisted, and automated risk aware remediation. Now, I gotta be honest, I'll always be honest. Let me be frank. Remediation to me is, and it's because I'm an ops guy, Ken. Like, I've always been an ops guy. I never could shake not being an ops person, right? It's all about the remediation. I'd walk into work every day, something's going to break. Like, my whole job is I don't have a job if stuff doesn't break.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's all about how fast can I get things back on the rails? You know what I mean? And so, I love that aspect of your article. And I just, I can't help but wonder, are we close to being able to get into some solid auto remediation solutions and security, or is it just too hard? I mean, is it just, threat vectors change every day, like every single day. And it just, are computers enough? I don't know.
Yeah, no,
You see
it's
where
fair.
I'm going though.
It's fair. So I think that things are gonna happen. Ops people are gonna be needed. The point of this is to make the ops guys more effective. So some of those technologies are making sure that, first of all, the low-hanging fruit, like all the chaff, just gets dealt with. The technologies listed, 5 of them, authentication, access control, do that right, and you get rid of a lot of the chaff. You can say, look, I know I've got these rules for who can talk to whom about what. That's essentially what authentication, access control are about. Do that. But like the principle says, be paranoid. So I got that, but I need to watch and see if somebody's breaking one of my rules, or got to watch to say, is there weird shit going on even after I set up my rules? Because my rules aren't perfect. And that's the visibility and the contextual analysis. And that's also to make sure you ops guys don't get flooded with, 5,000 high priority things every day. You want to deal with 5 or 10. You want the right 5 or 10 things. So you can go to your manager and say, hey, I stopped this breach. Do you know these people from, I don't know, from Belarus were coming in and trying to get into our system, and this is what they were up to? That's what you want to go talk to your manager about. Not, I spent 8 hours today chasing down 10 false leads. And then you find out 2 days later you were hacked because you didn't get to the 12th thing on your list. And the automated risk-aware remediation is to say the stuff that the risk-aware part is, yeah, I'm pretty sure this is right. You can deal with this for me. It made it through. It made it past the rules. The AI looked at it and it was probably okay, or the AI looked at it and it's probably bad. And, if you've got 95% confidence in it, deal with it, and you let me deal. The risk-aware remediation means that it's like, okay, I need a human to look at it because the risk reward profile on here is warrants that sort of stuff. Are we there? We're getting there. I can pick on the DOS example, but I picked on that one. I'll pick traditional zero trust, right? If you look at zero trust solutions that are coming to market today, they can look at a particular API or a particular request at a business logic level and say, this one needs MFA and this one doesn't. That's the first step in that journey to risk-aware remediation. It's like, okay, you say you're Mark. I kind of have risk-aware says, I've got 70% confidence you're Mark, given what I know about you, not just because you knew a password, but where you're logging in, what device you're coming from, what you're doing. I got 70% confidence. You want to check your account balance? 70% is good enough. You want to go transfer, make a payment for $1,000? Maybe 70% stuff, maybe isn't. You want to go transfer a bunch of money over to a bank in Panama? I want to be a lot more sure than 70%. And I step that up. And yeah, it could be MFA for step up authentication. It could be that, nope, you're going to have to go in person because I don't trust this. It's going to be whatever. And that's what you decide. That's the risk aware, right? Okay, I know what the risk is. We're getting there. We're also getting there in DOS, like I won't shut you out, but I might throttle you, right? I'm in Ticketmaster. I'm trying to have this agents buying tickets. I'm not going to completely shut you out, but I'm going to say the risk here is you might be one of these guys who's going to be buying a batch of tickets and scalping. So I'll let you buy a couple, but I'm going to throttle you down so you can't keep doing this. We're getting there. We're doing it in, like I talked about, these little ad hoc heuristic things. We're not there in terms of doing it completely AI, but that'll happen with.
All right, let me take you a slightly different direction. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I'm not sure because we've been talking a lot about zero trust, authentication, who am I, what am I doing? And so this could be unfair because I don't know what your background is and the total scope of threat landscape. But do you have a sense of what the next big one is? If I'm Bill Gates or Anthony Fauci, I'm saying there is going to be another huge pandemic, right? Like it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. In the cyber world, we haven't seen a huge showstopper, like I felt like we saw in the aughts and the teens recently, right? So I've just jinxed the world by saying that, by the way. What's your sense? I mean, nefarious agents of foreign governments working on the next big one that gonna slice us to death, or are we just relegated to DDoS attacks and password hacks?
I think I don't know what the next big attack's going to be, certainly, but I will say something I am worried about are supply chain attacks. I mean, okay, maybe that's not terribly original. It does get some press, but I see that the supply chain attack. There's so much, two main things. There's so much open source out there that people are using that it doesn't go through the same. It can't go through the same amount of scrutiny that people have with code they write themselves. The bespoke code, right? I wrote this. I go through design reviews. I go through static checks. I go through SAST. I go through whatever, all these hoops in my design methodology, and then I just grab 80% of my code from somewhere else. That's way too attractive a backdoor for an adversary. Whether it's anything from, hey, I can deliberately put a vulnerability in because some of those open source projects don't have great maintenance. Security holes, right? That I can take over that repo. I mean, if you look, you can find private keys for some of the open source software out there. You can just, if you want to, you can hack the repo. Typo squatting, all these things happen. And then, so that's one. So open source is everywhere. It's too easy a target. And then once you're in, it isn't like you're trying to come in the front door, right? Passwords you talked about, and these hacks, these are all coming in the front door.
You're inside, you're already there.
Right? Yeah, you're a component of the app. You're inside the app. What's better?
Right.
It's like you're already set up for lateral motion.
Right.
That's what I'd go after if I were one of the bad guys today.
All right, let me throw another one at you. You mentioned little interest in physics. I don't know people that have whether it's astrophysics or anything else, but I don't know too many people that have been in that space. I've a little bit of background on my part from a aerospace engineering perspective. Quantum. I don't know where you're at on that, or if you've had much time, stick time looking at quantum, but it seems like 128-bit encryption is going to fold like cheap lawn chairs once the qubit landscape gets where we want it, and that's a double-edged sword, right? We get to do some amazing things from a compute perspective, and so do the bad guys. You got an opinion on that? I totally put you on the spot there.
It's going to be an arms race, like all these things are. The first step is going to be quantum resistant algorithms, which I think they're part of the new NIST standard, or they're going to be coming out soon. Some of it's more bits, and some of it is just the algorithm. You pick an algorithm that's resistant to the sort of attacks. And now you get past my level of math, but the idea is that you pick algorithms that don't just work with simple factorization and things, and they become a lot harder, and people way smarter than me are working on them. And I think there's not much of a stretch to say it's going to happen. It's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. Exactly when, I don't know. And yeah, once that happens, and once you can get whatever the right size qubit computers out there, I think they're at 18 bits or something, 20 bits now, something like that, at least the publicly disclosed ones.
They have much larger ones, even IBM and others are saying they have larger ones, but their error rates are high, and that's a big deal. Yeah. You start talking about the anyway, they're getting there, though.
Attacker, if not today, within 5 years, we will break any particular encryption technique you have. So just take that as a given. We've been in those situations before. I remember in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of rampant speculation that the NSA could break a lot of the algorithms out there. And so we'll kind of go back to that. If we're not there already, there will be people sufficiently funded who can break any one transaction. If you're really that paranoid, you probably want to do something a little more a little more careful. A little further out there is right, just things where you're using not qubits, but you're using quantum for actually detecting tampering. So if anybody got in the middle of your transaction, you'll see it, and the message disappears. I don't know how that will. That's a little more speculative, but I expect to see it in my lifetime.
Yeah, and I like that one too. That's almost very weather pattern-ish, like work, and purpose built for for quantum kind of stuff, or it's a problem perfect for quantum rather.
Yeah.
I like it. Nice. All right. On the softer side, any career advice to people coming into the security space? What do you think? What do you think these new young whippersnappers should be focused on to help their career?
Well, yeah, security's hot. It's a great space to be in. I'd say I sound like an old guy. I know this. Look and see what's been done before. There's a lot of what we do today that are echoes of what's been done before, and they succeed or they fail in ways that rhyme with what happened before. So I just picked on it. And just in this conversation, I talked about a few things. I was working on neural nets in the 80s, back before they were cool, and before Hinton's good stuff, back when, for those of you that had like 3 layers and a simple hidden layer, for those of you who get that. K-means clustering for finding clusters, all these technology. Okay, so all these things are there, but what would I say? I'd say, so from a technology standpoint, look at that. Take a customer first perspective. That's another thing that I do, is that those of us who have been in the back end, sort of worked for a vendor and gotten deep in the technology, sometimes lose track of the fact that something has to be really easy to use, easy to deploy, easy to operate, easy to understand. And this is another I have so many, when you get old, you collect these things. I have another t-shirt that said, this is back from the early days of Unix, not Linux, Unix, right? Real programmers don't document. If it was hard to write, it should be hard to understand.
That's right.
That was great for back then. Right now, honestly, in security, I'll tell you what I see in the marketplace is that I go to a customer, and if I put a gun to their head about, do you want something that gives you 95% efficacy, but you're going to need some experts to run it, or it gives you 75% efficacy, but it works out of the box, they're almost always going to take option B. So,
Really?
right. There's a few enterprise apps, right? They'll go, for my crown jewels, I'll pay for the 95%. But for my long tail apps, no, I can't afford that.
And it's amazing because, I mean, there's companies out there now saying they have unlimited budgets on security, which really, that brings up a whole nother topic. Conspiracy Mark just entered the room. Right? Yeah. Who wants this to go away? Who really wants to solve the security problem? We've got, a massive industry. Every human on this planet pays a cyber tax for what it costs for us to. Can we not stop this?
Yeah, I don't believe, right. Obviously, there's no such thing as an unlimited budget, and anything that approaches that gets paid for somewhere else. I will say this is that risk-aware remediation. Part of it's risk reward, right? Credit card companies know this, right? They live with a certain amount of fraud. Their goal is not zero fraud. Their goal is to find the sweet spot where the fraud, the cost of fraud is as low as it can be, while maximizing the amount of revenue they get from legitimate transactions. That's where security will end up. It's not zero fraud. It is the fact that I want to, because I can make sure that there's no fraud. It's like, you want to log in, go down to your local office. We'll open up an office, come down there. We'll give you a one-time password. You go back, you log in, you're safe.
Okay. All right. But what I'm saying now I'll say something that I used to say to my Tech Fusions partner, Kyle, back in the day. When are we going to start going kinetic on people? Like, we know where most of these attacks come from, right? Whether I'm a hacker, originating, somewhere in, a legitimate office building in in Delhi, India, or I'm a part of a hacker group in Russia, or a hacker group in China, or some bunch of teenagers in Seattle. Like, we know where they are. We don't go after these people ever.
The good ones cover their tracks pretty well, and many of those groups you talked about, we don't have, without going extra legal, we don't have good ways of getting at them anyway.
You don't like my let's go kinetic.
I think that's you wanted predictions. I mean, yeah, probably my lifetime we're going to see cyber spill over in kinetic sometime in my lifetime.
I think so too. Sadly, it could be closer than we realize, and let's hope that. I'm kidding, but I don't want that to happen.
Well, kinetic's already gone cyber, right? That's table stakes. But going the other way, it'll happen.
Yeah. All right. Listen, how can I want to make sure I give you room to plug whatever it is that you're doing, or anything that F5's got going on that you want to draw attention to? Anything you want us to focus on from your company's perspective? Because we at ONUG, we appreciate our supplier partners who allow their smart people like you to be part of the team. So what anything hot on the F5 plate?
I'll give you this answer at two levels. One, as my employer would like, it's like F5, right? We are the application services company. Whether those applications are in the public cloud, hybrid cloud, on the edge, we're all about making them, delivering them, and giving them the services they need. That's the pitch. That's the vision of the company. It's a good vision. More companies should have that vision, but it's a good vision. I like it. But if nothing else, just adopt this mindset of security, right? The zero trust paper. It's think about what you're doing. Think about what's the least privilege. Think about a positive security model. How do you know what's going on? What's your visibility like? These general principles, they're common sense principles. They don't change with the technologies. People will try to sell you things like XDR or SASE or what are some other things, UBA. I mean, they're all fundamentally about, watch, observe, least privilege, and be paranoid. Do that. The technologies fall out of it, whether they're authentication or AI as a technology, they'll fall out, and then they'll solve your problems. But remember, and I mentioned this, I think, the Hollywood thing. Simon Sinek has this, starts with why. If you're a security guy, start with why. Why am I doing this? What am I protecting against? Don't start with the technology of, oh, I've got this cool new whiz bang technology. How am I going to use it? That's it. That's the thing.
Nice.
Going away message.
Well, I appreciate that. Listen, thanks. And for those of you, again, you can get to Ken's articles and content, the F5 article that we're talking about, what Hollywood taught me about zero trust. That's available at f5.com, company blog. It's there. The other articles, again, on onug.net under content and security blogging. So go check all those out. Again, this is another, kind of a great opportunity to see what we're all about at ONUG, see what we do on the working groups. And Ken is just, one of the best examples of, the kind of people that we have and work with at ONUG on the working group. So with that, I'll just give everybody a reminder again, ONUG Fall Conference. It is October, what did I say it was? October 19th and 20th, Center 415 on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. Be there again. It's going to be in person. That's the best. And where we like to say, hey, I know it works because I saw it at ONUG. We're going to be doing all kinds of live demonstrations and in pavilions, working group pavilions, be up and running. Big emphasis on the cloud security notification framework and what's happening there. So super important, and we appreciate it. Ken, thanks again for being with us today, man, on the ONUG podcast.
Thanks for having me.